So here I am inside of day one's assignment called Delivering Justice, Generate Questions and Connecting Ideas. So when you're looking at today's assignment, the first thing you want to notice is you'll see the story. It won't look any different than last week's, but what you will see is over here on the side you have first read, but then you have close read. You want to click on close read. And you want to click on the assignment that says explain relationships between ideas. You don't have to worry about generating questions or vocabulary and context. Just explain relationships between ideas. Once you click on that, you're going to see some instructions. One of the biggest things that this story does is in its biography, the author uses problem solution structure to help you understand the text a bit better and understand the information being provided. So, for example, in the very first one, as you scroll down, it's going to ask you to underline details in paragraph 4 that help you understand inequality in Savannah in 1932. You see, inequality was the problem in this story. Therefore, the author wants you to understand what is the problem. So let's go look at paragraph 4. Paragraph 4, we are looking for details that help you understand inequality in Savannah in 1932. So let's read it. On one shopping trip, the saleswoman would not serve them until after all the white customers had been helped. Wesley had heard the saleswoman politely call the white woman customers Miss and Mrs., but she treated his grandma as if she were a child, a nobody. I heard two details that helped me understand inequality. The first one I heard was that they would not serve them until all white customers had been helped. This caught me as very unequal. When you highlight it, what you can see is you can underline, and that's what they're asking you to do. So I'm going to underline my text. I could choose the color that I underline. I'm going to underline mine in blue. I also heard another detail in here that tells me about this problem of inequality. The second detail I heard was how they treated her grandmother. It says, or his grandmother, it says, she treated his grandmother as if she were a child, a nobody. You see, that was very unequal compared to how they called the white people, or the white women, Miss and Mrs. So that's our first example. Let's look at our second. In this next one, it says, underline the central or main idea in paragraphs 10 through 12. So I'm going to go to 10 through 12. If you notice, you can see the numbers here on the side. Here's paragraph 10, and I'm looking for the central or main idea. When we talk about central or main idea, it's kind of like the message of paragraphs 10 through 12. It's the overall idea. So when I read these, I want to look for an idea or a statement that really captures what all three of these paragraphs are about. So let's read them. Wesley knew that many black people didn't vote because they had to pass a test to register. The test was designed to be difficult for black folk to pass. It was intended to keep them from voting. Okay. So the first paragraph had to do with testing and about this test. Wesley was a member of the Youth Council of the NAACP, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. The Youth Council started a special voter school in the basement of a church. You see, that second paragraph, I heard about a voter school. First paragraph, I heard about this voting. So there's a connection here between this voting test and this voter school. With his friend Clifford, Wesley talked to everyone, even passersby, about voting. When he found someone who, scared by the test, had never registered to vote, he took them into the voter school. When they felt ready to take the test, Wesley went with them to the courthouse and stayed until they were registered. With Wesley's help and encouragement, many black people in Savannah became registered voters. So it had to do with this voter test that was difficult to pass. He had made this voter school and would take people into his voter school. Up here, he had created the voter school, and the first one it talked about them having this test that was designed to not allow them to pass. So what I'm looking for is I'm looking for a central or main idea in paragraphs 10 through 12. Well, I think the big idea when I read this is that they weren't intending for people to pass here, but because of Wesley, he had created this school, and therefore black voters were able to pass the test. Black people were able to pass the test. And so I'm thinking this last sentence, many black people in Savannah became registered voters, is my main central idea. Because when I read this whole thing as kind of becoming like a problem solution type text. And the solution is really my main idea. The problem is that there was a test designed to be too difficult for black folk to pass. But the solution was that he had created this test, or this voter school, to help people pass this test. Therefore, the big idea is that many people had become registered voters. Now, it's easy to get caught up in all of this because I could easily underline one statement from here, one statement from here, and one statement from here. I have to step back and say, what happened? There was a test. So what about the test? Well, Wesley created a voter school. So what's the big idea? Many black people became registered voters is the big central idea here. This is what you do for this assignment this week. For today, all you're doing is you're just doing the close read, explain relationships between ideas. Each time, you're going to do one of these things over here on the side. So our next one would be underline details in paragraphs 17 and 18 that help you understand the relationships between the students and Wesley. So I would find my paragraph and I would go through and do that. You're going to complete all of these today. You do not need to go through and worry about generate questions, but you do need to complete the text evidence piece as well. Here, it's going to tell you use parts you underline to complete the notebook activity and answer the questions. Use text evidence to describe. So, in Savannah, back then, black people weren't treated as white people. They want you to give an event. Well, I remember from a paragraph in the beginning that there was an example where people called them Miss and Mrs., but they treated his grandmother, like a child. So when I look at that and I think, okay, well, that's one of my events, I could put that here and type it. Event number 2, well, I got to go through and find where black people weren't treated as well as white people. Kind of like that voter test as well. So I'm using my ideas to do that. Then it wants me to tell me the solution to this problem. Well, I remember one very specific solution that we just read about what Wesley did. And then the last question you're going to answer is, how did the idea of equality relate to the idea of segregation in Savannah? And that one's a little more difficult to answer, but I want you to do your best on that. How did the idea of equality relate to the idea of segregation in Savannah? So I want you to tell me how those two are connected, how equality relate to segregation. Thinking about equality and segregation, they could be opposites, which is a relationship, or problem and solution. Do not do generate questions and vocabulary and context. I keep repeating that because I want to make sure that you only need to do the explain relationships between ideas. So when we look at your work, we're looking for underlining and then answers to these 3 questions at the bottom. Please let us know if you have any questions on the question page or join us at one of our Google meetings at 2 o'clock. Have a good day.